They told me my kids weren't invited to Christmas Eve because they would ruin the clean aesthetic. I thought that was the worst part, until my entire family showed up at my door the next morning dressed in matching beige, like a cult, demanding I pay $2,500 for the very party my children were banned from. Sloan looked past me into my living room, at the paper snowflakes, the crayons, the dinosaur pajamas, and whispered, "Your kids are a lot. Off-brand, really." What they didn't know was I'd been keeping receipts. Literal ones, emotional ones. And one more twist was coming, one they never saw coming. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because what happened next didn't just break a holiday. It cracked open decades of silence, favoritism, and lies. I didn't even know were shaping my life. All right, let me take you back. I didn't grow up in a loud house, not the good kind of loud anyway. No laughter, no chaos, no playful screaming. Just the quiet clatter of Carol Parker rearranging her expectations and the steady hum of Dennis pretending everything was fine. I was the first kid the test run, the one who learned early how much space I was allowed to take up. Spoiler, it wasn't much. One of my earliest memories is a dinner table that smelled like canned green beans and overdone roast. I was 8, Ryan was 4. He was bouncing his feet against the chair legs, humming some cartoon theme song. Carol reached over, smiling like she was posing for a magazine, and kept dropping rolls onto his plate while Dennis chuckled. When I tried to reach for one, she tapped my hand lightly without even looking at me. "Hold on, Ethan. Let your brother eat first." The words didn't hurt as much as the ease with which she said them. Like it was obvious. Like it was natural. I swallowed the burn in my chest, pretending I wasn't hungry. But that moment carved deeper than I understood back then. School wasn't much different. In 7th grade, I won my first art award. Nothing big, just a middle school competition where the gym smelled like sweat metal, folding chairs, and cheap microphones with constant static. Dennis clapped once, then went right back to fussing over Ryan, who'd been given a participation certificate for effort in PE. Carol angled her phone toward Ryan, telling him to hold it up higher, sweetheart. Me. She snapped one crooked picture and never asked for a retake. I didn't know it then, but that blurry photo would be the template for how I existed in my own family, barely captured, easily forgotten. My teenage summers were spent in a diner that always smelled like burnt coffee and fryer oil. I came home with grease on my forearms and tips that barely made minimum wage feel worth it. Still, I handed most of the cash to Carol. She said it would help with the electricity bill. I believed her. 2 weeks later, I overheard Ryan bragging to his friends about new sneakers he got. "Mom had extra money lying around," he said. That one stung like biting tinfoil. It was the first time I realized my hard work came with someone else's name printed on it. When I was 19, the stakes grew sharper. Dennis had screwed up on a contracting job, missed permits, big fines, the kind of thing that makes grown men sweat through their shirts. He called me voice tight, telling me the house could be taken. I was barely scraping by as a junior designer, my first actual paycheck sitting in my account like a fragile secret. I gave it to him. All of it. He didn't say thank you. Carol later told relatives, we all pulled together. All pulling together. Funny how in our family together always meant me. Meanwhile, I was going to art school at night, dragging myself through freezing subway stations, my portfolio digging into my shoulder. Those trains smelled like metal and old dreams. I was tired all the time, but determined. And yet every holiday, Carol would reenact the same speech, how they'd sacrificed so much so I could go to school. I let her keep the story because I thought it didn't matter. I didn't know stories could become cages. Ryan, of course, floated through high school like a leaf in a lazy river. Everything handed to him. When he turned 21, He destroyed his first car because he never changed the oil. Dennis shook his head, but never raised his voice. Ethan, do you think you can help your brother out with something reliable? Reliable? That word glued itself to me. I bought Ryan a used Honda Civic with my tax return, and he treated it like a shared toy between us, because I'd understand. One afternoon I found out he had sold the car not to pay bills or emergencies, but to buy a camera for content. It was the first time I saw my generosity turn directly into someone else's flex. My marriage came and went like a storm you see forming on the horizon, but pretend isn't real. Our wedding was small fairy lights strung along a budget venue, and Carol spent most of the time criticizing the centerpieces. When the marriage collapsed years later, they didn't show up. Not emotionally, not physically. I told them I was getting divorced and got 2 responses from Carol. Don't make this messy. From Dennis. We don't take sides. Silence can bruise harder than shouting. The first Christmas as a single dad was the opposite of perfect lights, uneven dollar store ornaments, Lily drawing on wrapping paper with markers, while Mason tried to eat a bow, but something about it felt more honest than anything in my childhood. There was warmth even in the chaos. There was real joy, the kind that shakes the camera in photos. But the Parker family has a way of stretching itself into every corner of your life. It didn't stop at holidays, phone plans, streaming services, favor after favor, each one dressed like a loving request. Every month, a new charge, a new mistake, a new promise to pay me back that dissolved faster than foam in stormwater. It wasn't help they were draining me because I was the easiest one to drain. I didn't recognize the pattern yet. Not fully. But something was forming under the surface like a bruise deep inside the bone. And I didn't know it then, but that bruise would matter later. By the time I hit my 30s, the Parker pattern wasn't just a pattern anymore. It was a system, a routine, a quiet machine humming underneath every interaction. I kept telling myself it was normal, that every family had its cracks, that mine just happened to run a little deeper. But eventually, the cracks started talking. I remember one Thanksgiving the year before everything blew up. Carol had decorated the house like she was expecting a magazine crew to show up unannounced. Gold-rimmed plates, cloth napkins shaped into swans, a turkey so dry it could have doubled as insulation. Ryan waltzed in late, wearing a jacket worth more than my rent, kissed Carol on the cheek, tossed his keys on the counter, and said he was exhausted from building his brand. Carol touched his face like he'd returned from war. Then she turned to me and said, "Ethan, could you take out the trash bags on the side of the house? They're ruining the look." The look. That was always the word with them. I walked outside, breathing in the cold November air. I heard laughter from inside, the kind they saved for Ryan. The kind I could never seem to earn, no matter how convenient or helpful or invisible I became. I stood by those trash bags longer than I needed to, staring at the Parker house glowing warm behind frost-covered windows, wondering why being their son always felt like standing in the yard, never the living room. A few weeks later, the subscription started hitting harder. Phone plan overages, Hulu upgrades, Apple Music Family Plan that somehow had 8 devices instead of 4. One night, while Lily and Mason were asleep in a tangle of blankets, my bank app buzzed again, another surprise deduction. I sat at the kitchen table under the dim light that made everything look softer than it really was. I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Receipts. At first it was just for budgeting. Later it became something else. Memory. Proof. A breadcrumb trail back to my own sanity. Around that same time came the brunch with Sloane, the day I realized she and the Parker aesthetic deserved each other. The cafe smelled like lavender syrup and burnt espresso, the kind of place where people come to be seen instead of fed. She ordered pancakes, but spent 10 minutes slicing them into geometric shapes for photos. She didn't eat a single piece. When she asked what my kids usually wore, I showed her a photo of Mason in a dinosaur hoodie and mismatched socks. She laughed, then said, "Oh, that's adorable, but definitely not camera-friendly." Camera-friendly? I didn't know it then, but that word would echo back at me like a curse weeks later. That night after the brunch, I tucked Lily into bed. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. She asked if she could put another paper snowflake on the fridge. I told her yes, and the way her whole face lit up could have powered the building. That's the thing about kids. They aren't aesthetic. They're honest. They're alive. They don't shrink themselves to fit someone else's picture. At least they shouldn't have to. But the Parker house wasn't made for honesty. It was made for display. I realized that again on a snowy morning when I dropped by to return Dennis's drill. Carol opened the door wearing a cream sweater and an expression that didn't match it. Her eyes scanned me the way people scan receipts, checking for errors. She barely said hello before launching into how Ryan's new collab might take off, how proud she was of him for being entrepreneurial. I didn't say anything, but my chest tightened with something sour. I knew that taste well, bitterness mixed with recognition. I'd tasted it since childhood. Then came the moment that should have woken me up sooner. Ryan asked if I could help him design packaging for his candle-line candles he had not yet figured out how to produce. I asked for details about the scent. He shrugged and said, "Something clean." People love clean. Clean, like Sloane's Instagram grid, like Carol's holiday tables, like a family that edits its mess by cutting out the children who make it real. I stayed up late that night reworking his mock-ups. Not because I wanted to, but because habit is a powerful thing. The Parker habit was stronger. When I finally crawled into bed, snow tapped the window like someone asking to be let in. My body felt heavy, my mind even heavier. I didn't know why the word clean wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't know it then, but that word would be the fuse that finally lit the explosion. And all of it, all the dinners, the favors, the half-lies, the swallowed pride, the quiet nights counting my own sacrifices, was building toward one moment. One call. One line I'll never forget. "Ethan, your kids can't come to Christmas. They'll ruin the perfect image." I didn't know it then, but everything after that sentence would change who I was forever. Conflict didn't explode all at once. It leaked slow, quiet, the way water slips under a door before you realize the whole floor is ruined. And with my family, every leak was disguised as love. That's how I missed the signs until they were stacked so high they blocked the light. It started with a phone plan. A harmless thing, supposedly. Carol called one night while I was cleaning up glitter stuck to the kitchen floor. Her voice was soft, like she was requesting a hymn more than a favor. "Ethan, sweetheart, our phone bill is getting ridiculous. Could you add us to your plan, just until we figure things out, just until?" Famous Parker last words. I agreed because that's what I'd always done. And at first it felt good, dutiful even. Then a new device appeared on the plan. And another. And another. Dennis said, "Must have been a mix-up with the carrier," and Carol murmured, "Don't make a fuss." But it wasn't a mix-up. It was a pattern. I tried to tell myself it was manageable, but the truth sat heavy in my chest like wet laundry. Then came the streaming services. Hulu, Netflix, Spotify, then Apple Music. I'd scroll through the other devices connected section and see unfamiliar names like Parker iPad, Dad's new phone, and Ryan's MacBook Pro, as if he ever used anything professionally. I'd see him posting selfies from cafes, claiming he was grinding on a project, and wonder if my subscription fees were powering his glow-up. One Friday night after the kids were asleep and the apartment was finally quiet, I noticed a charge that made my stomach drop. It was small, just $12, but it was the final straw. an add-on channel I'd never subscribed to. I clicked through the details and saw Carol's email linked to it. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. I felt stupid. An exhaustion pooled behind my eyes, the kind that feels older than you are. Around this time, Ryan's requests escalated. They always start small with him, like a stray cat testing a door. One night he called, voice buzzing with fake urgency. "Bro, can you send me that Adobe login again? Mine's acting weird." Acting weird. Meaning he hadn't paid for it in years. I gave him the login again and told myself it was the last time. It wasn't. 2 days later, at 3:12 a.m., I got an email about a premium template bundle purchase I never made. I followed the breadcrumbs, and of course they led straight to Ryan's laptop. "Accident," he said. "Thought it was free." He even reacted to the screenshot with a heart, as if financial theft were an act of affection. I felt something crack then, not loud, but definite. A thin line forming across old glass. The brunch with Sloane didn't help. That day still sits in my memory like a stone underwater, heavy and distorted. We met at a cafe filled with people who smelled like expensive soap and ambition. She cut her pancakes into tiny geometric pieces for content, then pushed the plate aside. At one point she leaned forward, her voice low, like she was sharing a secret. "Your house has such character. It photographs honest. Honest." The word sounded like a diagnosis. Then she smiled and added, "But maybe too honest. Kids are adorable, but they really do clutter a frame." Clutter, like my children were dust on a shelf. That night I lay in bed replaying the word, feeling it crawl under my skin. I didn't tell Lily or Mason any of it. I just tucked them in, kissed their heads, and pretended my heart wasn't bruising. But the real blow came later on a gray Tuesday morning when the world felt like a half-erased sketch. I was packing lunches when Carol called again. Her tone was bright rehearsed. "Ethan, honey, we're doing Christmas Eve here this year." I already knew what was coming. And then she said it. "Sloane wants the dinner to be a clean aesthetic. She doesn't think the kids fit the vibe." Fit the vibe. I felt my fingers freeze around Mason's juice box. Lily looked up at me, big-eyed and smiling, completely unaware. She'd just been uninvited from her own grandparents' Christmas. I felt something in my chest twist, not break, twist, like it was reshaping itself around a truth I'd ignored too long. I should have said something then. Should have yelled, should have laughed, should have hung up. But I didn't. I just said I understand. And the moment those words left my mouth, I hated myself for them. They tasted like surrender. The next morning, a text from Dennis blinked on my phone. "Don't take this personally," as if excluding my kids from Christmas was a clerical error, as if I hadn't been taking their version of not personal for decades. It only got worse. By noon, the family group chat lit up like a warning alarm. Carol announced that the hosting budget was tight and the event could use some support. Then Ryan added a line that still makes my blood pressure spike. "We're thinking like $200-500. He called it an investment in our family image. Family image. I stared at the message so long, the words pulsed. Then I scrolled through my receipts folder and dropped a screenshot grid into the chat. Netflix, phone plan, Adobe, template charges. Carol replied instantly. "Tacky Ethan," Dennis added. "We'll pay you back." Ryan chimed in with, "Chill, bro. It's Christmas." The irony made my vision go sharp around the edges. Later that evening, while folding Mason's tiny dinosaur pajamas, my chest tightened so hard I had to sit down. I realized I was physically reacting, my body recognizing a threat before my mind did. I was being drained. Small cuts over years until there was barely anything left of me that wasn't paying for something. But the moment that left a scar came a few days later. Lily asked small and quiet, "Daddy, are we not good for Grandma's house?" Her voice trembled like a loose bulb. That was when the Parker machine stopped humming quietly. That was when it roared. I should have broken then when Lily asked that question. But decades of conditioning kept me standing. I hugged her, told her she was perfect, told her none of this was her fault. But after I tucked the kids into bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the cheap overhead bulb flickering just enough to make everything look unstable. Maybe that was fitting. I opened the family group chat again, scrolling through the messages like someone examining an old bruise from different angles. Carol accusing me of being dramatic. Dennis telling me to calm down. Ryan insisting the dinner was a branding opportunity, like that made anything better. Then Sloan sent 3 beige mood board squares. I stared at those images, white candles, bleached pine cones, a table so sterile it looked like a lab. Then I looked at my fridge covered in Lily's rainbow snowflakes and Mason's crooked drawings of dinosaurs wearing Santa hats. The difference wasn't lost on me. One was staged beauty. The other was life. The escalation didn't stop there. That same night, Ryan FaceTimed me without warning. His face filled the screen, sharpened jawline, perfect lighting the soft whir of some overpriced ring light behind him. He didn't even say hello. "Bro, I need those product shots edited tonight. The brand wants to see them by morning." "What brand?" I asked. He shrugged. "Still negotiating. But this could be big. Don't mess up the timing." "Mess up the timing, like my time didn't exist." I told him no. 2 seconds of silence. Then he laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Come on, man. You know you're the only one who can fix my stuff." Fix my stuff? I hung up, and the silence afterward felt electric charged, dangerous, necessary. 2 days later, the universe decided to show me exactly how far the Parker entitlement stretched. It happened at 3:04 a.m. My phone buzzed with an alert from the cell carrier about a SIM transfer request. Half asleep, heart pounding, I logged into the account and saw it. A new iPhone 15 Pro Midnight Black ordered on my plan, shipping to Ryan's apartment. And because of that order, Carol's phone had been deactivated. I called the carrier, my voice shaking more from disbelief than anger. The rep told me politely that someone on my plan had initiated an upgrade. Someone. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. I canceled the order, filed a fraud alert, and set the account to owner approval only. The next morning, the family chat exploded. Carol. "My phone isn't working, Dennis. Did you do something, Ryan? Wow. Petty." Petty. The word felt like a blade dragged across old scar tissue. But the worst part wasn't the money or the phones or the endless taking. It was the story they told themselves about me. That I was selfish, ungrateful, difficult. Every accusation they threw at me was a reflection of what they'd been doing for years. Yet somehow they'd convinced themselves I was the problem. And they weren't done. That Thursday, I picked up the kids from school, walked them into the apartment, and found Carol sitting on my couch. She had a spare key from years ago, when I still believed boundaries were rude. She stood up, smoothing her beige coat like she was preparing for a scene. "Ethan, we need to talk about Christmas," she said. Lily froze in the doorway. Mason clung to my leg. My blood ran cold. "You can't let the kids think this is about them," she continued. "They're just a lot. Sloan is really trying to make a good impression, and Ryan is working so hard on his brand. Don't ruin this." Ruin. I held Lily's shoulder, feeling her tense under my hand. "We'll make it up to them," Carol added. "Maybe a small gift exchange. Something low-key, like my children were a side project." I asked her to leave. My voice didn't shake. Hers did. After she left, Lily climbed onto the couch next to me and whispered, Grandma said we're a lot. Her voice cracked on the last word. Something inside me tore clean across. I pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her hair, breathing in the scent of crayons and fruit snacks, the real smell of childhood. You're not a lot, I said. You are everything. But even as I spoke, anger thudded in my chest like a second heartbeat. The next escalation came from a direction I didn't expect. Sloane. She showed up outside my building one evening, the sky dimming into early winter blue streetlights, flickering on like tired eyes opening. She wore a long beige coat and held her phone like a shield. I'm not here for drama, she said. Then you came to the wrong family, I replied. She looked past me into the apartment where Lily and Mason were dancing around to a holiday playlist. Their laughter spilled into the hallway like light. And something in Sloane's expression cracked. Not sympathy. Something older. There's stuff you don't know, she said quietly. About me. About my mom. I didn't ask, and she didn't elaborate. She just said, your family. They expect you to hold everything together. Ryan included. Then she left. A shadow with perfect posture. I didn't know her past, but I recognized the look. People raised in curated homes learned to fear anything real. Then came the real tipping point. The next day, while I was stirring pancake batter, my phone buzzed again. A new group chat message. Ryan, we need the money by 3 p.m. Photographer requires a deposit. Carol, be an adult, Ethan. Dennis family requires sacrifice. Sloane, clean lines only. No kids. I stared at those messages with a stillness I'd never felt before. Not numb, not shocked. Clear. Crystal clear, like a window finally washed after years of grime. I typed nothing back. Not yet. But inside me, the decision clicked into place. Quiet. Final. Unshakable. The Parker family had pushed for decades. They'd taken inches until I had no inches left. Now, they were about to meet the version of me they created. And they weren't going to like him. I remember the exact sound the doorbell made that morning. Sharp. Too cheerful. Like it had no idea what it was announcing. Lily and Mason were in the kitchen singing off-key to some Christmas song, pancake batter smeared across their cheeks like war paint. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and warm sugar. Safe. Alive. Ours. Then the bell rang again, longer this time. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door. There they were. Carol, Dennis, Ryan, and Sloane. All four standing on my porch like a board of directors ready to fire me from a job I never applied for. They were dressed in coordinated tones of beige and cream, the winter light catching the soft fabrics like they were lit for a photo shoot. Even their shoes matched. Behind them, the sky was a flat gray, the kind that warns snow is coming. Their breath fogged the air in little white clouds. Mine stayed trapped in my chest. Carol stepped forward first. Of course she did. Her coat was cinched perfectly at the waist, hair smooth, makeup subtle enough to say effortless without actually being effortless. Ethan, she said, voice quivering not with emotion, but with accusation. You made me feel terrible last night. I blinked, because I said 2 words. Her jaw tightened. That's the problem. You're always withholding. Family needs communication. Dennis nodded like he'd been waiting for his cue. He placed both hands in his coat pockets, exhaling like a man carrying ancient burdens instead of a lifetime of deflection. Son, he said, this is one Christmas. Don't blow it out of proportion. Ryan shifted next, adjusting a watch he definitely couldn't afford on his own. He looked like he'd been photoshopped into the scene-polished, curated hollow. Bro, we're trying to land a partnership here, he said, a real one. Sloane lined up a photographer, a food stylist, everything. Don't make this harder. Sloane stepped forward, chin lifted. "We're building something," she said. "You're an art director. You get it. The feed has to feel cohesive, and, well..." Her gaze flicked over my shoulder into the apartment, past the messy bookshelf, past the paper snowflakes, past the tiny shoes by the door. "Your kids introduce a level of chaos that doesn't photograph well." Chaos. Not children? Chaos. I felt heat rise up my spine, slow and steady. But I kept my voice calm. "They're my kids," I said. "They belong with me on Christmas Eve." Carol pressed her lips together, forming the kind of expression that usually made me back down. "We're spreading ourselves thin hosting this," she said. "We'd appreciate help." There it was. The real ask. Her voice sharpened. 2,500 would take the pressure off. I laughed, quiet, stunned. "So I'm supposed to pay for a photographer to capture my kid's absence?" Carol recoiled like I'd slapped her. "Don't be crass," she snapped. "We want you there," Sloane added softly. "Just without the kids." Behind me, little footsteps padded across the hardwood. Daddy Mason called. "Are the pancakes ready?" I turned instinctively, shielding him with my body. He peeked around my leg anyway, holding his stuffed T-Rex upside down. His hair was sticking up in 3 directions. His cheeks were smudged with flour. He smiled. A bright, messy smile full of life. Sloane's expression flickered annoyance first, then calculation, then something like regret. But it passed quickly. I crouched down. "Go sit with your sister," I whispered. "I'll bring the pancakes." He nodded and ran back to the kitchen dinosaur flapping behind him. When I stood again, the 4 faces in front of me had hardened. Ryan crossed his arms. "Friends don't let friends miss opportunities," he said. "Family," Dennis corrected. "Family," Ryan echoed as if he'd invented the word. I felt something inside me settle. Not anger, not hurt. Clarity. I took a breath. "Right," I said quietly. "Family." Then I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. "I'm not paying for any of this," I said. "Not the photographer, not the food, not the candles, not your clean aesthetic, not $1. Carol gasped. Dennis frowned, shaking his head. Ryan muttered, "Dude, over $2,500. I stepped closer, not aggressive, just steady. "This isn't about $2,500, I said. "This is about a pattern." I let the word hang there, heavy and undeniable. A pattern where my time, my money, and my kids are disposable whenever it inconveniences your image. Silence. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Dennis tried again, voice low. "Think of the bigger picture." "I am," I replied. I reached behind the door, pulled out the piece of paper I had written the night before. I didn't hand it to them. I just read it. "1," I said, "I'm taking you off my phone plan at the end of the billing cycle." Carol's eyes widened. 2, I'm changing all my account passwords. Adobe included. If anyone logs in, I'll report unauthorized access. Ryan's jaw clenched hard. 3, I won't fund events my children are excluded from. Dennis opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. And 4, I said quietly, if you ever try to shut my kids out so you can look cleaner online, you shut me out too. The words didn't echo, they landed. Heavy, final. Ryan scoffed. You'd blow up Christmas over a vibe I met his stare. You blew it up when you made family conditional. Carol shook her head, voice breaking. You're being cruel. No, I said. I'm being clear. Then Sloane stepped forward, phone trembling in her hand. This is unhinged, she whispered. I looked at her calm. Then don't hinge on me. And for the first time in my life, I closed the door not out of anger, but out of certainty. The click echoed through the apartment like a starting gun. Lily and Mason squealed with laughter in the kitchen. Something crashed, probably a spoon or a bowl. Pancake batter hissed on the stove. The world inside my home was bright, messy, genuine. The world outside was quiet and cold. I stood there in the hallway, hand still on the doorknob, breathing in the scent of cinnamon and crayons. Something in me had shifted. Not a crack, a break, a clean one. And once something breaks clean, it doesn't go back the way it was. I didn't open the door again that day, not even when the messages came pouring in, Carol calling me heartless Dennis, telling me I needed to be the bigger person, Ryan demanding I reimburse him for the photographer deposit he claimed to have paid. I muted the entire thread and went back to flipping pancakes. The batter sizzled, the kids laughed, and for the first time in years, the noise didn't feel like something I had to apologize for. Later that afternoon, while Lily and Mason built a lopsided blanket fort, I sat at my desk and opened the receipts folder. There it was, months, years of charges, screenshots, bank alerts, deleted promises, accidental purchases at exactly 3:04 a.m., log-in attempts from devices I didn't recognize. Not a revenge file, a clarity file. Something to remind me I wasn't imagining the pattern. I didn't plan a takedown. I didn't draft an exposé. That's not who I am. But I did open new accounts, switched banks, froze my credit, removed every Parker from every plan and subscription they'd quietly occupied, reset passwords with two-factor authentication. This time tied to a device in a drawer Lily calls Dad's secret robot key. And one by one, every door Ryan used to slip through closed. By evening, the consequences started landing, just not on me. Dennis texted. Our phones stopped working. Ryan dude Adobe locked me out. I have deadlines. Carol. The TV won't load anything. Fix it. I looked at the messages and felt nothing but a clean, steady quiet inside. A new kind of silence. One that wasn't suffocating, just honest. The kids fell asleep early, curled up together on the couch like kittens under a blanket. Snow drifted against the window in soft, lazy flakes. I stood in the kitchen, pinning a small sheet of paper inside the cabinet door. Not dramatic, not poetic, just 4 lines, my new rules. I don't fund disrespect. My kids are not negotiable. No is a full sentence. Family is earned, not owed. They thought cutting my kids out of the picture would keep everything neat. All they did was hand me the one weapon I'd been missing the whole time, a frame I could finally draw myself. That was the Christmas everything shifted. Not perfectly, not magically, just honestly. My parents kept calling for days. Ryan kept blaming me for his brand setback. And Sloane sent one last message saying she needed space to reevaluate everything. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they won't. But for the first time, I'm not shrinking myself to make room for them. I'm building something different for me and for Lily and Mason. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.